Hi, what's up? It's Steph on Spotify, the Steph's Rock Show. Our next guest is an Emmy Award winning journalist, Cristina Mendonsa. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
This is a dream come true. So, I interview rock stars, and when I tell my neighbors that a rock star is coming by, they don't bat their eyes. But when I told the suburban dads that Cristina Mendonsa is coming by, they spit their drinks out. They freak. Do you know that you're kind of a crush, a household crush?
Well, thank you. That's nice of you to say. I think when you're in someone's home night after night for a couple of decades, they get used to you.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that you're a journalist. You have your master's in communication. I did communications as well. When did you get started or know this is a career I want to take seriously?
I was really lucky. I knew in high school that I wanted to do this. I mean, I knew that I loved writing stories. I've always been interested in journalism, worked on every school newspaper, all the way up through my school years. In high school, I really thought I wanted to do radio full time for the rest of my career. TV really wasn't on my radar. And I did get a radio job. I worked in radio for a few years. And at that time in radio, the radio jobs, particularly the news jobs, were disappearing. Stations were consolidating, companies were consolidating. So I thought for any kind of security in electronic media, I needed to look at TV. And that's when I made the transition. And I say made the transition, but it wasn't all that easy. I mean, it took a couple of years for me to find my first position. But once I did, I fell in love with it. I fell in love with working with video, and I've never stopped, even though I'm back in radio now.
Yeah, you have the short list, you're broadcasting, you're in radio, you're all over the place, and you even own your own production company and you're a producer, Mendonsa Media. What don't you do? You're kind of all over the map.
Sleep.
That's
I don't
amazing.
sleep. My husband always
Yeah.
says, working is my hobby. And I think it's not so much, I don't consider it working so much as I just consider it being creative. That's the way I express myself in the world. Some people make crafts. Some people play music. I put together stories that I think people might find enlightening and interesting.
Well, you're very talented at what you do. Definitely goals.
Thank you. Thank you.
Has there ever been an interview that was hard for you, that stands out to you, that still was difficult to conduct or you think about still?
Difficult. I wouldn't say difficult. I would say just, interviews that I knew I needed to be well prepared for. I interviewed Barbara Bush a couple of times for the campaign when her husband was running for his second shot at the presidency, which he lost. But preparing for those, I was very young at the time. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't want to sound like an idiot to her. I wanted to ask good questions that were going to enlighten people. So I studied hard for that interview. There have been other interviews that were more emotional. Lacey Peterson's mother was an interview that meant a lot to me, that she trusted me enough to sit down with me and talk to me about the murder of her daughter and all her family had been through. And my approach at those times is to try to make the person that I'm interviewing feel as comfortable as possible, sharing whatever they want to share and being sensitive, yet gleaning information that I think is useful to people watching.
Yeah, I understand that too. Because normally I have rock stars and bands on and it's silly and fun, right? Like we want them to laugh. But I recently had Jody Plache on, which his father killed his kidnapper in the airport years ago. And that was hard because I had to get in serious mode of I'm not my silly rock show character. I actually wanted to know how he's doing today. Has he survived? And he's written some books and he seemed fine. But you've been serious. And I also read that you went to even in California growing up, Reagan, when he was going for governor. You've grown up in politics or kind of in the know when you were little. Did you know these were monumental things that you were at or not till later in life?
Not really. I mean, when I was little, it was mostly what my mom and dad would talk about at dinner. So my dad was essentially Secret Service for the state of California. So he protected Governor Reagan, was the first governor he worked for. And then he worked all through Governor Brown and then for Governor Duke-Majan and a little bit of Governor Wilson as well. So he was in charge of dignitary protection for these governors. So politics was something we were very comfortable talking about at the table. Mostly my sister and I would just listen to my parents talk. But I mean, Dad would, talk about all kinds of things happening at the Capitol, bills that were controversial. I remember during some pretty significantly, kind of sketchy times, he would have to leave the house and go to a public official's home, a statewide public official's home, and stay at the home with them to protect them. So I knew that Dad had, he was gone, and I knew he worked in politics, but it only was later that I really got to know exactly what he did. I think about high school, I developed an interest in politics. My undergrad is actually in political science. And my dad passed in 2001. He passed like a day after 9/11. And thank you. But there have been so many times that I've wanted to talk to him about things happening in the political realm, especially with this latest assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump. I really wanted to talk to my father about that, because that's what he did. His entire career and his entire life was set up, do the advance, and set up the protection for these statewide public officials. And they were trained by the Secret Service.
Wow, that's really neat. Like, you already grew up in the know. Do you think in 2024 it's become a little dangerous to even be a political commentator and talking about politics or reporting on
Well,
them?
I think, maybe dangerous in terms of being cancelable. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. It's a different, the journalism I'm doing now, at least on the radio, very different than anything I did in
Yeah.
television. Very
I'm
different.
very afraid to talk. Like, in 2004 when I started in radio, I didn't hold back. I kind of said whatever I wanted to. Now, I'm watching my P's and Q's, even though it's just my own podcast. I stay on the rock and roll world, and I don't venture off of reporting even much news, which fascinates me, but I don't wanna lose listeners for even
Right.
reporting something that happened, 'cause it's high times, right? It's scary.
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. Everything's on social media. I mean, as soon as you say anything, for that reason, I don't put posts up on X very much.
Yeah.
I don't really comment on posts, I should say. I'll put a post up, but I won't really comment on other people's posts that much, because I think so much can be misconstrued. On the radio show that we do for KFBK, I feel much more freedom than I ever have to say things. And when I say things, I don't mean advocate for one side or another. I advocate for common sense. I mean, if something
Yes.
looks crazy and something
Yeah.
looks like, what the hell are they doing? Then whether it's
Yeah.
a Democrat or Republican, we bring it up and we talk about it. And I feel much more
Yeah.
comfortable doing that now than television, which is much more structured. I mean, on the radio show, we have 4 hours. It's freewheeling. We're
Wow.
building it as we're flying it. It's pretty crazy every morning. But on television, we had more staff, more producers, and things were tightly scripted to hit these particular breaks. And so there wasn't even much time to ad-lib about anything.
Yeah, I understand that, and I just don't like people fighting over things that seem silly and doesn't directly affect them personally or their family. I want everyone to just chill, get along. That's why I'm like, go back to listen to music, make a playlist, and don't take it too seriously.
Right.
Okay, my next question was, how has reporting the news affected you as a parent?
Oh, um, before I had kids, I was, I don't know how to describe it, kind of bulletproof to the emotion of things. Like,
Me
I
too. That's what I'm
Yeah, I covered
Yeah.
some pretty heinous, horrible crimes in Denver when I was a crime and courts reporter. I mean, just brutal murders, homicide. I mean, all of that. And it didn't find its way in very much. And I found after I had children, my husband used to say it really softened your edges. I see things
Yes.
maybe a little bit more with a little bit more complexity, and instead of 2D, it's now more 3D. So I think it did change me as a journalist in a way I think was better. I think it made me a little bit more intuitive about certain things. And so I
I
think
love
being
that.
a parent really improved my journalism.
Yeah. I definitely left Hollywood and was like, I need to go back up home to Sacramento to raise the kiddos, and I've calmed down quite a bit since becoming a mom.
Yeah. How old are your kids?
They are 10 and 6, and it's funny because
Oh,
I look rocker, but I'm, like, on Catholic schools and, heavily involved in all these things that I don't look the part, but I have, like, 2 different lives.
you're the coolest mom then. That's
Oh,
awesome.
thank you.
Do they
I
listen to your
try.
show?
But no. Oh gosh, no, no. But I've taken them backstage sometimes if they like the band or they can pop on. And recently I went to Moto America because my sons like racing and they wanted to meet some of the racers. So it was cool that my background got my kids to the races and to interview Bobby Fong. They're into this. I don't know racers, but my kids are, and they're teaching me about TikTok and YouTube and who's popular with the younger generation because I'm kind of out to lunch on that. So they're helping me out on who to interview.
Yeah. Kids do
And I
that. They
saw
keep you they keep you, they keep you relevant in the know. I know both of my daughters are musicians. So, I mean, the music they were listening to was the music, I found myself listening to when they were younger.
That's what I was gonna ask about. One of your daughters looks like she's a rocker, way cool. So,
Yeah.
has she always been in bands and kind of fascinated with music?
Yeah, both the girls. So, my older daughter, Katie, was in a metal band here in Sacramento
No
for a few
way.
years called A Mile Till Dawn. And she played with one of the Deftones kids. So he was
How
in the band as
cool
well.
is
So
that?
yeah. So it was a great time for her. She had a great time. It was funny though, when she graduated high school and moved away from California, she kind of got out of it. So she's in marketing now. She's doing something different. And then our younger
Mm.
daughter, she also has been playing drums, guitar, bass, since she was really little, and even piano since 2. We put them in lessons. And she's now in a punk rock band in Nashville called Massey. They're getting a lot of great play, and they
I need
have
to
like
have them on my show. I
you
gotta
do. They're so
yeah.
fun. It's like this whole like retro girlhood vibe punk. It's so fun. And yeah, so
Okay.
she's drummed for a few bands, but she's loving this project. And her goal is to become a producer. So she's working with producers, and she wants to own her own studio someday. So that's her thing, and she's totally entrenched into the music scene in Nashville.
That's really cool. I wish they were out here. I'm hosting a big battle of the bands at Goldfield Roseville August 9th, and so we're having bands, like, competing, and I'm just emceeing it and then performing, but I'll have to have you contact your daughter to see if she could come by my show and get her band on because that would
That
be
would
pretty
be
cool.
great. I'd love that. I'm sure that'd be awesome.
And I laughed way too hard. I also read that you wrote Cougar Tracks, and I'm a cougar, well-known cougar in the area. So but I don't think it was about me. What was Cougar Tracks about?
So that was so I went to Del Campo High School here in the area, Fair Oaks,
Okay.
and they're the Del Campo Cougars. So that Cougar Tracks was
Oh,
my very first column that was written for the Fair Oaks Post. I was still in high school, but I was working in professional journalism for this newspaper, and so that was the name of it. Yeah.
oh, I love it. It wasn't a warning that I was downtown Sacramento or anything, 'cause that's worried. Okay, and I wanna know who is left on your list to interview? Who have you not interviewed that you would love to sit down with, or a
Um,
story that you would love to dive deeper into?
There are so many. I mean, I would love to interview Elon Musk. I find him
Oh my
fascinating.
gosh, that'd be so
Love
cool.
to interview him. I would
Yeah.
love to interview Stephen King, the writer.
I
Uh,
just contacted him last week. I
did
shoot for the stars. I don't care. I contacted Tim Curry, Stephen King. I contacted Todd Phillips and Adam McKay years ago, and they wrote back, would love to. So ever since landing a couple big names, I'm like, I'm gonna send out my press request. What are they gonna say? No? And then you just
Totally,
spin the same
absolutely. You
position.
know what? I do the same thing. It's like you never know unless you ask. And there are certain people that would be totally open to an interview, and you're never going to know unless you ask. So no, absolutely, I'm with you there. I
Yeah.
ask.
You're
So
right,
far,
'cause I
Stephen
think
King said
Stephen
no.
King is unique. Yeah. He's so kind of just different, and hearing about his personal life, Stephen King, his wife almost left him recently because he had a song on repeat for 2 months. Like, I wanna interview somebody like that, and how does he
Yeah,
write while the song's just on repeat in the background? Like,
he'd be
but when you do
great because
something
he's a
so artistic.
musician.
Yeah, yeah. Is there another person or kind of like a story that you've heard about that you'd wanna know more about?
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm a curious person, so I
Yeah.
I love stories involving science. So when there are big scientific breakthroughs, those fascinate me, particularly when it comes to space. I'd love, I mean, if I could just like be a reporter and work at NASA and just report from NASA, I would love to do that at this point in my career. So that's fascinating to me. I
Would you report from space? Would you go up?
Yeah, well, I
That
don't
would scare
know.
me.
I think it could be cool. Yeah. I don't know. I
Yeah?
mean, I take fewer risks these days than I did when I was younger. When I was younger, I went to the Middle East and didn't think a thing of it. I spent time in China and on the border doing stories. And then again, one of those things that changes once I had kids, I was like,
Yes.
maybe I shouldn't put myself in situations where I might, end up in a Russian prison or something.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it can be scary to be a journalist and where you're reporting, and even I saw Tucker recently go to Russia, and I'm like, "That's scary." Like, I know he's trying to get the story, but what if he doesn't come back and he's a dad? So
Scary
you have to
now.
just yeah, you have to always think of that. Okay, and I'm curious, what would 20-year-old Christina say about you now? Which was 2 years ago, right?
Yes. Right.
We'll just say
What
that.
20-year-old Christina say? I mean, I think I think she would be happy to know that I'm happy. Maybe. I mean, I tell
Aw.
that's an interesting question because I always tell my daughters, you're not right now, the work you're doing is not for you. It's for 30-year-old you, or it's for 40-year-old
Oh,
you.
okay.
That's who you're trying to please. That's who you're trying to live up to. And I would say, 20-year-old me would have worried that what was I doing enough? Was I working hard enough? Was I making the right contacts? Was I doing what I need to do to make sure that 55-year-old Christina,
No, you are
is
not. No, you
I
are not.
I
Oh
am.
my gosh, girl. No. I would try to take you out to Red Lobster. I don't believe you. Um, so you have good work ethic. Like, at that age, you weren't kind of Sac State running around doing sororities. You were just, like, worried about if you're working hard enough?
I was. I don't know how I got cursed with that or blessed with that. I don't know
You're
however you want
blessed.
to put it. I mean,
You're
part of
blessed.
me feels like I didn't have as much fun as I probably should have being that young.
Oh
But
god, I
here's
can't say
my
that.
mindset.
I'll be
I was going to Del Campo High School, and I knew I wanted to be a journalist. I knew I wanted to be a broadcast journalist of some sort. But my family wasn't in the position, despite my dad's pretty prestigious job. He didn't make that much, and my mom stayed home. So going to Columbia School of Journalism was not going to be in my cards. It just wasn't. So I thought, okay, I need a plan for my career. How am I going to make up for the fact that I don't have a prestigious degree that might get me a top 20 anchoring job or into the network? And I thought, okay, well, you need to start your career at the same time as you start college. That's how you're going to have to do it. And you're
yeah.
just going to have to pay for college as you go. So it took me 8 years to get through college because I
Well,
paid
that's
for it.
phenomenal that you did it
I
yourself, though.
Well, I didn't want to take loans. Those kind of scared me at that age. I didn't want to be in debt, even though it was much cheaper back then. But I thought,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to have to start my career. So I moved around a lot. I went to 8 different colleges before I graduated because I moved so much for different jobs in radio and then in television. So by the time I finally got my top 20 anchor job, I had like one class left. And so I came back to California, started my job, and signed up at Sac State, got my last class done, and was finally finished. And then I guess had a glutton. I'm a glutton for punishment because I went back to get my master's, not for another 20 years, but then I went back to get that.
Overachiever. Oh
So,
my
well, I
goodness.
mean, after the kids were kind of grown and I saw the writing on the wall that, you don't see a lot of women in their mid 50s anchoring a nightly newscast anymore. It's just they're too expensive. and you
Mm.
and it's, a new generation usually comes in. So I thought, okay, I'm going to get my master's degree and see what I can do with that. And I did that about 3 years before leaving the station.
I will say, even though I love education and furthering it, my perspective has changed throughout the years. I've gone back to Sac City to take classes for fun here and there in philosophy, but I have my college degree, and at the time, I thought it was so necessary. Then
Mhm.
at the different stations I've popped in and out of, none of the other DJs have had any degrees, And nowadays, I don't think it's as necessary, which could be an unpopular opinion, to have your degree or get your degree. If you know, obviously, if you want to be a lawyer or doctor, of course, but if you want to go into broadcast, you could just literally hands on jumping into it. I've seen people take off rather than the college route that could slow you down. You could miss some opportunities when you're younger.
Yeah, I think that's very Gen Z of you. I mean, that's the way Gen
Yes.
Z is thinking right now. I mean, my youngest daughter, she did 2 years, and then COVID interrupted her college experience, and so she went to trade school instead and learned music producing through trade school and through her contacts. For her, she doesn't feel like it's necessary. It still makes me nervous as a Gen Xer not to have a college degree. That makes me a little bit nervous. Our older
Yes.
daughter did go all the way through. She did it online because she wanted to travel the world. So she traveled the world and did college online and finished her degree a few years ago. And I have to admit, again, as a Gen Xer, I was like, phew, okay, she's through college. My younger one, I'm still a little bit nervous about it, but I'm trying to realize that's just an outdated way of thinking, because today the game has changed. It's totally different. And it also was important to me as a parent that my kids not be in debt.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think I would have gone if my grandfather didn't help me. And he was a judge and in politics growing up. So I grew up in the courtroom watching him. And that's how I got really fascinated in politics. But it was just normal for me. I'm like, oh, everyone's grandpa's a judge, right? This is what happens. And
That
then
was a
I got
cool
a,
job to be able to watch growing up.
yes, and he was, like, head judge of San Joaquin County, he started the library, he was just so into education and everyone loved him, and so when you said you wanted to talk to your father, of course, when anything huge happens, I wish my grandfather was still around because he could give me a great perspective and was such a smart, man. Um,
Yeah.
Also, I saw you were at, like, a Miss California pageant, and that's why I was gonna say I was Miss San Joaquin 2004, and I forgot. Like, literally, I forgot
Oh.
about it because it's just been so long, and I have colored hair now, and I look a little different, but so one of your daughters was in the pageant, or you were just
Yeah.
kinda helping?
So my youngest daughter, who, I mean, looking at her now, similarly, she's colored hair. She's like,
Yeah,
punk
I'm
rock
like, I still have
queen.
my crown, but it
Oh,
I don't
I
know,
love
like
that.
oh, yeah. I helped host, like, 10 years ago, but
I hope
I
you
don't know
still
if
wear
they'd want me back with all the tattoos. But she was in the program a little bit ago?
So she just wanted to do it. It was a one off. So she came to me one day out of the blue and said, I'd like to do this pageant. And I was like, what? You've never expressed any interest? Okay. So I hired someone to help her learn to walk in heels and to get that part of it, all the standard operating procedure pageants. Bought her a beautiful dress. We drove down to Brea together for the weekend to participate in this pageant. We had no idea what we were getting into. We had no clue what we were doing while we were there, but we had a blast. I mean, I remember the woman coming in to tan her in a tent in our hotel room for
Yeah.
this event. And then she did her talent, and she did, all of the interview and all that stuff. And it was the other moms, because people always talk about the pageant world as not being very supportive, competitive, and all of that. The moms were fabulous. I would have never made it through without them. They were wonderful. I mean, I remember wheeling Danny's clothes out to we had to wheel it from like the hotel to the stage, and like it tipped over in the middle of wet grass, and all the moms
Uh-oh.
jumped in and they were helping me get everything. I just felt so like I was an incompetent pageant mom, but I did my
You were
best.
brand new. Yeah.
We had so much fun doing the weekend. She never really wanted to do another one, but we ended the weekend with her. I think she got Miss Congeniality or something, or Miss Photogenic, and that was the extent of her pageant experience. We ended the night with spaghetti and ice cream and had a great time.
Oh, I love it. Well,
It's a great
it's that
memory.
I did it one time because my grandfather told me to do it, and so I was like, and that's the only pageant I've ever been in, but it was really fun to, like, represent San Joaquin County and be a part, and I still talk to a lot of the girls that were in Miss California. I experienced they were all sweethearts, so I didn't have any kind of mean pageant girls or anything like that.
No, we didn't either. We had a blast. They were all super
Yeah.
kind.
Have any upcoming projects that are happening soon?
I actually do. I just finished a documentary. I'm so excited about it. It is focused on veterans, which is, something very close to my heart. And it's called Sacred Texts of War. It's going to be premiering at the Harris Center in Folsom on September 29th. It's a Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. And we watch 5 veterans, combat veterans, go through treatment for what's called moral injury. Moral injury is a subset of post-traumatic stress. It involves the additional aspects of guilt and shame. And these are people who killed people in battle, which went against their religious or moral beliefs. They lost people in battle. They made decisions that resulted in the death of other people. They lost people close to them, and they have this guilt and shame. And that is what is essentially moral injury. And that's how it goes kind of above and beyond even post-traumatic stress. So we'll follow them through this treatment program, which is revolutionary. It's done by a local clinician who is amazing. And the documentary runs about an hour. And I'm super proud of it. It's been a year and a half of my life putting it together. And I think people are really going to like it and learn a lot from it.
Yes, I love veterans, support them, and I dance at some of their events. And then also, it's really important that we talk about mental health more. I have a mental health hotline that anyone can text and call for free on my page if they're feeling alone, and I really do answer it anytime. So I love that you are doing that, and hopefully I can make it out to that premiere.
Oh,
And that
that'd
would
be
be awesome
great.
to check it
Yes,
out.
Sunday, September 29th, 3 o'clock at the Harris Center. And tickets, you can find tickets online.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for stopping by, Cristina, and we'll keep up with you.
Stefs, I so appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for chatting.
Okay.